pleasure to meet you all. My name is Kristina Narusk, and as said before, I come from one Estonian startup called GrabCAD. For a start, I would actually like to thank Mati for this really great opening talk, and I can kind of confirm that all the key points that he brought up in his presentation do apply, even for a startup originating from Estonia and having Estonian founders. So everyone taking notes and making reminders of the key points, these actually were very, very valuable, and speaking from experience, these were the things that GrabCAD has gone through. My presentation today is a little bit deeper insight into how to grow teams from just 2 co-founders to international development and product team. We have experienced, well, we are not that young anymore. We have gone through this really early 6 months to 1 year phase of all the pain and all the glory. And hopefully the insights will at first raise some questions and then give you at least some ideas like how this so-called successful startup life actually works out in reality. Okay. So for introduction, a little bit of my background. I have been working in software development over 10 years. I started off as a very junior assistant at what at the time was one of the largest IT companies in the Baltics called Microlink. I worked there for very many really high-end software development projects and ended up being the team lead for product development. I did find the whole corporation life a little bit boring after a while. So before Microlink was acquired by a Nordic telecom company called Telia Sonera, I decided to leave for the first startup that I worked for almost 4 years called CarTime. I joined already existing small team. We had around 10 persons at the time. I was not the founding member or any of the early employees. I joined the team to do product development for a very high-end time-stamping technology and spent 3.5 very interesting years over there. And then when GrabCAD came about and to be, it was, for personal and professional reasons, a very exciting opportunity to help out 2 people that I knew at the time with all sorts of knowledge. So I've been working in GrabCAD as a development team lead in Tallinn since 2011. As you can see, it's the positions that I've held have never been only the official one, but there are always some multiple roles to fill in. I also organize everything regarding Estonian office and the team here in Tallinn. So it's not just product and software development that I have to deal with day in and day out, but basically everything that kind of country manager type of person has to do. So I believe that this background, having been working with very different teams from up to 40 people, software development departments to already existing and very young to be established teams, I hope it kind of helps you to recognize some of the patterns that team building and different type of team psychology is about. So In short, what I would like to focus on today is to briefly tell about what I think a great team is about, how like a great team evolves over time, especially in startups. The people that you start off with during the very early phase both grow and develop, as does the company. At one point, it becomes really critical to put the key people and the right people into right roles. It's very challenging if you have no experience, but everyone learns, and I hope to share some experience that GrabCAD has gone through. And then finally, because we today have also office in Boston in the US, and we are expanding our team in the States as well. It brings in a whole different set of challenges regarding different cultures, the geographical distance, how to manage the time zones, people that have very different backgrounds, and how to keep a distributed team focused in one place to actually reach the goals and targets of the idea. So to start it off, there is one, I think, key point why teams are important, or why team is important. I think it's a very basic thing. Pretty much every psychology book that you have or will read tell is that success is very often a team effort. If a company becomes successful, if a team or idea generates millions of dollars of revenue and profit, it's always the team effort, because it's not like a one-man show or result of one single person. On the other hand, failure is always, or in very many cases, blamed on individuals. Oh, we could not reach our target because this person failed to do something, or that guy did not fulfill his role, or we had a problem, or whatever. So in order to actually become successful, both business and organization-wise, the team is the key thing that everyone has to work on. And as the company grows, the leaders or the founders of the company have to keep that in mind, how to both get the talent in, how to grow together with the talent, and how to get the excellent results with the talent that you have. My personal opinion why teams, team building, and team growth is actually a hugely fascinating subject is something that I've experienced in all the three companies that I worked in, is that in usually a great team is a collection of personalities and people who kind of boost each other's strengths, and the total actually results in something totally excellent and amazing. And at the same time, because you have this great team, like everyone in the team has some faults or some weak points, but in a great team, these weaknesses actually disappear. It's not something that people talk every morning over the coffee that, oh, this guy could not do this, or we have a problem with this person with that. When everyone gives in or does great performance and is motivated to work hard, then the strengths kind of outperform all the weaknesses, and the focus is just boosting up the performance of the whole team. With that idea, we have been trying to, and hopefully it will work out in the longer term as well, to, as GrabCAD grows as well, to focus on just finding and growing with the people and persons who have some excellent skills, who bring in value in terms of business and with their expertise, and can fit in the team and help the company grow. To lighten up the presentation a little bit, I actually have one really excellent video to share with you in a moment. As an introduction, I have to admit that I'm actually a huge fan of football, which may be surprising, but I greatly enjoy watching any kind of championships with national teams. And when I thought about putting together this presentation, I was kind of figuring out what could be like a really great example of how great teams perform. So the next video that I'm going to show you in a minute is actually a quarterfinal match between Ghana and Uruguay during the World Championships in 2010. The backstory is that the match leveled to 1-1 in the last extra minute of extra time. It was absolutely great play from both teams. They ended up kicking the penalty shootout, but it's a 3-minute long video that I think captures all the characteristics of both a great team, how individual players in your team can save, perform, score, and perform under pressure. I would, just as a remark, I would, if you could pay attention to the video at around 2 minutes, 10 seconds or so, where there is a huge activity going on around one goal, and then I will give a little bit of the background information why I showed this video.
I always thought we had a deal. Now that we quit, how does it feel? The curtain falls for you and me. Just let me know, how does it feel?
Don't forget your spell on me, but tell me now, how does it feel? How does it feel? How does it feel? How does it feel? Lessons learned, I'm on my knees. Just let me know, how does it feel? How does it feel? How does it feel? How does it feel? Your spell on me, but tell me now, how does it feel? How does it feel? How does it feel? Lessons learned, I'm on my knees. Just let me know, how does it feel? How does it feel? How does it feel?
Thought we had a deal. Now that we quit, how does it feel? The curtain falls for you and me. Just let me know, how does it feel?
Don't forget your spell on me, but tell me now, how does it feel? How does it feel? How does it feel? How does it feel? Lessons learned, I'm on my knees. Just let me know, how does it feel? How does it feel? How does it feel? How does it feel? Lessons learned, I'm on my knees. Just let me know, how does it feel? How does it feel?
So this is how Uruguay got into semifinals, although they actually used a hand to save one of these really critical sets of the ball kicking in front of the Ghana's goal. I have to say that this is actually like the typical case of startups as well. You never know in which situation someone has to do a rescue or a really tough save that at the end of the day actually helps out to move forward and get on with the actual development of the company. I will be coming back to the reference to football in the next slides as well. I hope no one is actually offended that I picked football because I honestly know nothing about basketball or handball or any other ball game, but it actually applies to any kind of team sports. Coming back to the experience with GrabCAD, one can actually separate three different critical phases of the company and team development. I split it into three and kind of titled them firstly as this really early decision-making period. This is something that I believe very many of you either have already gone through or are at the middle of. It means where you have an idea, you have a friend or some colleague or someone who believes in the idea, and you actually have a desire to execute something on your own. In GrabCAD's case, took around few months where the founders decided that, okay, there is a market gap, there is an opportunity, there is clients and like business case in this industry, and we should do it, or at least try. This is usually also the period which typically ends with either all of the people or at least the founding people quitting their jobs. I think it's critical because if you truly believe in your idea and you truly want to execute it, you have to focus 110% on that. It's extremely complicated to do as a second job or just a weekend project. Yes, in the long haul it can be successful, but it takes a lot of time and nerves and energy. So usually I believe that the teams that are founded and then become to be successful later on have to make that decision at some point of time. Then becomes the founding period. This means that you start to find a couple of more people to your team who believe in the idea and who are actually ready to help you to execute and get results. This is the period where basically everyone that joins your team is important. They all have to be A players or first-class experts in their field. And it means that every hire that you do is very critical. And then usually this period can be a year, 16 months, whatever it takes. Usually that also means that the team starts to find resources or investments from investors, VCs, friends, parents, etc. And once the financial grounds are established, the company reaches the early growth period. You have proved that there is there is something in this business idea, you've piloted, you've tested your product on users, on clients, you have a reason to expand your team, you have a lot more people believing in your idea. Once you're starting to grow, focus on communication and company's goals and team's expectations become critical. And this is the period where it's extremely important that everyone that is putting in the effort to get to great results have exact same expectations. It's really hard to get anything done if a third of the team just wants 9 to 5 job, a third of your team wants some personal success, and third of your team thinks only longer term stuff. Coming back to the football reference, this is pretty much how GrabCAD team started to grow. You typically have 2 or 3 founders. It's usually very important that they are sales and business oriented to people. Because if you do something in your garage or bedroom or in the office during the weekends, you have kind of no or very little audience to your idea. Usually, like it's not likely that something happens. In football terminology, these guys that are in the front and most often score goals are strikers. So this is something that I believe successful startup teams definitely need to have. Like at least one founder has to be the striker type, like getting there, pushing, only goal is to get the ball into the net. During the same founding period, you start to look around these first key persons that would fill in your roles. In football terminology, they are usually midfielders who can cover a lot of ground, who can both attack and defense, and who are like pretty much multi-talented. I apologize if it's a little bit difficult to read, but the key points to reinforce is that in this very early founding period, the founders are the ones who push the idea forward. If the founders do not believe in the idea, it's very difficult to make anyone else to believe in the idea. The first hires are extremely critical, and everyone in your team has to be multi-talented and have multidisciplinary skills. It's very normal from organizational point of view that the first people who join the team have to fill in several roles. You don't have the money to hire 10 people to do one marketing, one writing PR, blog posts and stuff like that, one doing support, one doing development, one sales, etc. You maybe have 3 or 4 people who have to fill in every of them, and they have to be capable of doing that. In GrabCAD's terms, the key lessons that we have learned, and maybe it's useful to keep in mind, is that the first critical point that we heard earlier in the previous presentation as well is that choose people wisely. I mean, these will be the people and persons who you end up being together with pretty much 24/7. One important thing to keep in mind is the values and the attitude create the norm for the following people who get hired. So it's even more critical to get the top people to your team first, because they set the level. In product development kind of guidelines, it's always, there is a really typical idea that the first users of your product or the first consumers or clients of your product will set the level for the following. GrabCAD is a community of today over 250,000 engineers. And one of the first goals was to get really high quality 3D CAD models from the first users. Because if the first users start uploading bolts, plastic vases, toothbrushes, and things like that, it's really difficult in the growth period to get the next set of users to contribute much higher level content. It has applied in GrabCAD's case 100% to focus on the quality users, quality members, to set the tone of your product or of your community. It 100% applies to team building as well. You have to have key areas covered. Sales is important. You have to have the visionaries, the strikers, to push forward the idea. But execution is critical as well. It's, you can get away with selling your idea and selling your product for a couple of months, maybe a set of users, but the execution has to follow, unless it's very difficult for you to actually be believable. The fourth point is overselling and grounded decision-making, hype versus delivery and results. You need both. It's very natural nature of an Estonian, be really modest, quiet, reserved, self-critical, etc. This is not something that actually gets you millions of users around the world. So you have to be pushy. But on the other hand, there has to be someone in your team making the critical decisions that actually can be executed. Fast hire is a key. Fast fire is critical. I have found this one to be one of the toughest challenges. Everyone knows that any kind of technology people or people working in IT have basically companies to choose from where to work. It's in Estonia, in the US it's the same way. So it's not like you have this queue of developers at your door who want to work in your company. It's difficult to prove yourself if you are a very young startup. Even for GrabCAD, this today is very challenging to find top quality software engineers. So it's easy to say that you need to, in order to grow your business and develop your company, you need to hire fast as well, otherwise it will become a plop. But you still have to be picky. Fast fire is critical because the people who don't fit into your team, it's much wiser to let them go earlier than later. There is kind of average standard that average US companies, at least technology startups, have. And the number is that you get, with the hires, you get around 70% of them right the first time. It's okay if for 30% of people that you hire, they end up being unfitting, they are not probably the right persons for their roles, it's okay. In GrabCAD's case, we started off terribly. We basically got it right with only 15% of our people. I think from the people that were in the team during the first year, besides the founders, there's only one person who is still in the team. It can be several reasons. It can be that people's motivations are different. It can be that the personalities do not match. But it's critical to overcome the mistake rather sooner than later, which means that for the second year, we had to get the hires right 100% of the time to get the percentage up to the 70. And one thing that I would like to point out is that wrong hires are never the fault of the reason of the person who joins the company. It's always the fault of the person who made that decision. So we have had to let people go. It has usually never been the problem of these people, but it was the wrong decision making from either the management of the team or myself or someone else. It doesn't mean that these people are somehow bad or do not perform. They were just not the match for GrabCAD. So in summary, you need players in your team that actually can read the movement of the ball without excessive talk, and they know and they can run where the ball will be kicked. In this football video, there was one great example that usually you score goals where one of the strikers runs towards the place where the ball will be kicked, not where the ball actually is. So this is something that gets your company and your team forward. And it's essential that everyone in your team has the ability to read everyone other's activity and act upon it. Then comes the early growth period. You now have probably 4 or 5 people in your team. You're starting to do your second round of hires. You have actually identified the roles that needs filling. You still need to keep the level up in terms of hiring only great people. There's a saying that A players hire A players, B players hire C players. So once you hire the B player, then you're already in trouble. It's okay that you know that you have to probably hire this marketing manager, but there is no one perfect for the role that you know at the moment. Don't hire the wrong person, but just try to kind of postpone or fill in this role by several people themselves until you find this great match. The key things to keep in mind is that when your team grows, the management can actually start focusing on the key business goals. It's important because in the very early phase of the team building and the company, the first people, the founders, have to deal with everything. Once your team grows, it means that everyone starts to focus on their key areas and key strengths and push them forward. Team leadership and individual performance are both critical. It means that if the team grows, you need people who have leadership skills. Otherwise, it will become a mess. And on the other hand, you can't forget individual performance, because although success is based on great team performance, you have to have everyone executing at a very high level. And people should be working in the roles that they are and perform at their best. Yes, it's okay that for some period of time, someone who does, I don't know, your design of your website or your product also does some community management or writes some random blog posts. But once you kind of identify the key areas that actually kind of influence your business performance and progress, then you should find the right persons to the right roles. During the months that GrabCAD went through in this early growth period, and what we learned is that you have to have a mix in your team. It's okay to have both junior and very experienced people in your team. It mixes up both the kind of social environment and professional environment. But in our case, we have had a very rough lesson that we've learned is that if you don't have experienced people hired first, it's much more difficult to kind of organize your team in a way like that later on. The GrabCAD story started off with people who had no development knowledge at all. The first 3 people who started off with the idea had not written any lines of code in their life. And they were very unknown people in Tallinn or Estonian like IT circles. So it was really difficult to convince or hire any kind of a very experienced developer to join the team, because no one had heard of the founders ever before. If you start off with very junior people that you actually don't personally know yourself as well, then there's a lot of energy going into kind of explaining stuff and making sure that the people put in top quality work. The second thing that we've learned is that you need to find people with great people skills. And you have to find people with great expertise in their field. And if these two characteristics combine in one person, it's a jackpot. I think I personally know maybe 2 or 3 really like hardcore software developers who have excellent interpersonal skills. And vice versa, if there are some people who are great at team building and communications and getting the excitement up every morning, etc., then it's very rare that at the same time they can do some like hardcore database building or I don't know, handle all your server software and stuff like that. So you actually need both. As the team grows, both become more and more critical. The third key point is that recognition should be result-based. The team grows. You have some people who've been in the company for a longer period of time. You have some people with 10 years of experience versus the guy who has only 3 years of experience. But in order to kind of have a very healthy environment for the team growth, you should kind of encourage and recognize people based on results, not based on seniority or longevity in the team. And do not overlook quiet people. If your team grows, you have 10 people in your team, there can be this guy who rarely speaks, but he writes or develops excellent product or comes up with top quality stuff, but he doesn't speak much. It doesn't mean that he does less work or he performs worse. I have to say that one of our best hires within last 12 months was one guy who like hardly got any words out of his mouth in the job interview. So yes, it's difficult to evaluate what the person will be in 3 or 4 or 6 months' time. And probably the decision whether this person will be any good or not somehow has to do with hiring experience as well, that I had like very little, and probably many of you as well. But still, I would emphasize the fact that it's not talking that gets things done, but actually doing. The fourth point, which may sound a little bit silly, is character management. When you have A players in your team, it's very normal that everyone has different personality, different lifestyle. In the case of Estonia, usually the A players can basically choose where they work or which idea they want to develop or build. And if you have experienced people in your team, some of them might have families, some of them might have some hobbies that take some time. And it's necessary that you actually manage all these expectations and people's everyday lives so that they can be like the best during the week or the work days. The fifth point that I pointed out in the football pitch picture as well is that if you have more people in your team, it allows the founders to focus on the strategy. But only in the case where everything in your backstage works like a well-oiled machine. It sounds like some kind of like manufacturing, like line process or something like that, but in our case it has been truth as well. This point has been reinforced with the fact that we today have a team in Tallinn and a team in Boston. The Boston team mainly, or part of the team in Boston mainly, focuses on customer and product development and sales. And it could not be done if the management people or the founders have to deal with everyday things day in and day out. It's not working like that. It becomes even more critical when you have more than 15, 20 people in your team. And to sum it up, you basically need players that score. Great team is all about excellent people who can perform individually as well. And in order to get the most of your idea and to have this everyday work being done as brilliantly as possible, then you have to have everyone doing excellent work in any role, because you never know when, for example, the goalkeeper has to get on the pitch in this penalty series and actually kick the ball in as well. You never know when your product or your service or something will be in trouble, that someone who is maybe overlooked in this everyday work every now and then does the same. In GrabCAD's case, it has happened that some of our really critical situations, either there's some problem with our service, either there's some major issue with the hosting site, Amazon, that, I don't know, there's some huge storm in the west coast of the US. Something happens, and it always happens either on Friday night at 8, either on weekends, before Christmas holidays. It's like the Murphy's Law. And then you need to have everyone in the team who is willing to, or who has the responsibility, who is interested in the business goals as well, because everyone knows that when our site is up during the Christmas time, it means that maybe these 10,000 engineers who decided that, oh, I have free time, let's check out what's new on GrabCAD, and we display the site is down message, that everyone has the responsibility to fix these things as soon as possible. And it's usually actually not the managers who can solve these situations. These are the people in your team who are the best experts on their field and who skip everything to fix that. I have a real-life example. We were planning our Christmas event last year in Tallinn. We had 3 activities planned. We wanted first to go and see one manufacturing company, how actually engineering process looks like, because in GrabCAD, very many software developers and salespeople don't actually know what engineers do day in and day out, or how their actual daily life looks like. So we had that planned. Then we decided that no one has played not bowling, but this, where you throw this stone on the ice. Curling, yeah, exactly. So let's do a Christmas event and let's go play curling. So we had planned a curling session for 2 hours, and then we had a dinner table reserved in one of the restaurants in Tallinn. So we thought that, okay, let's wrap up everything at work on the 23rd of December around 2 p.m. and then we have this nice Christmas stuff. And I was out of the office for the lunchtime, and when I got back just before 3, and I saw everyone coning behind their laptops, and what's going on? And then we had a case where there were some really serious hardcore spammers spamming our site. It was a very ugly case, and we had to solve that straight away. So we thought, okay, let's try to kind of rewrite some hard-coded rules into our code to kind of stop that kind of activity, and let's add up some intelligence to solve the problem. We estimated, it will take maybe an hour or 2 hours. So I called into this place where we're supposed to have an excursion that, sorry, we have to skip that today, maybe sometime later. 2 hours passed, the situation got even worse. And I had to call into the curling kind of site or the company that we probably will be an hour late. An hour later, the lady called from the receptions that, oh, will you be coming? I said, probably not within the next hour. And she said, well, then don't bother because there are traffic jams anyway and you won't get there before midnight. So that was kind of off the table as well. And then we had reservation for the Christmas dinner for 6:30, and we actually get to order our food just before 9 p.m. So these things happen, and you have to have people willing to get excited about solving these situations and problems. Another really interesting example was, I'm not sure how many of you know, but we host our application in Amazon, and we somewhat depend on them. So if something global happens with this service provider, we are in trouble too. And of course, these things happen on Saturdays. So on Saturday, one of the guys who was capable of solving these things had actually forgotten his phone somewhere. Another guy who was capable of solving these things was actually sailing somewhere on the southwest coast of Estonia, so he had to actually climb to the mast to get the mobile reception to guide other guys how to solve this situation. And it ended up me going into some Amazon console. I know nothing about databases or server environments to actually try to figure out what's the problem. So you have to have people that are willing to kind of step up from their everyday roles to solve things in critical decisions. If such characteristics are missing from people from your team, then reconsider. To move on. This is the phase where GrabCAD is kind of stepping towards to. You can see that in this football pitch, basically most of the roles are filled. Today, or in a couple of months, our team, or part of the team in Boston will be almost as big as we have in Tallinn. We are still hiring in Tallinn, but there are already several people doing their stuff at their best. And you can see that there's this management bench part that has actually appeared. Usually the coach, manager, some advisors, trainers, whatever, are the ones who are, during the matches, sit on these benches and kind of oversee what's going on, make the decisions. They look at the things from the broader perspective. They're not actually actively running around on the pitch. This is at some point of time when this happens to growing companies as well. You can't expect that the CEO does everyday work in your company. If there are investors, there are advisors, there are VCs who need kind of the stakeholder communication management and talking to regularly as well. You have to have these brilliant people in your team who are capable of running your business, not on your own, but basically nothing happens if you have to fly out for 2 weeks to some conferences or some investor meetings, etc. I put it down into as founders moving into kind of club manager role. It does take a lot of effort and time to deal with all sorts of communications, relationship management, dealing with all sorts of investor stuff. Hiring is still part of the job, but the CEO or the founders have to be comfortable with that. They know that they have the key people capable of delivering. In GrabCAD's case, it's communication, communication, communication. We have today almost 5 different nationalities working in our small team. Our daily language in Tallinn office is English because we have a guy from Germany, guy from Finland, guy from Venezuela working in the team. Everything in Boston is in English. We have 7-hour time difference. There's only 2 hours of official working time overlap. And we try to make all the decisions, phone calls, conferences within that time. So it's complicated. And you have to, or you need to have people willing to have that 2-hour phone conf at 11 p.m. after your family dinner to discuss things through or to solve something or decide something. So communication is the key. It's especially critical with Estonians. Because the culture of Americans and the culture of Estonian, the personalities are very different. it's like the first introductory sentence that I always tell to the new people who join the company is that, oh yeah, when you like talk about something or present something or do something, then don't expect any questions or any arguments or any debates or something like that at first, because it's just the way Estonians are. Fortunately, like the people in GrabCAD are somewhat different, and I can strongly recommend that as soon as you can diversify your team in terms of nationalities, the earliest you do that, the better. Because the fifth and sixth and seventh people in our team were those who did not speak any Estonian, and this English-speaking environment, like very vibrant and very open and talkative, was kind of set before the next Estonians joined the team. So yes, the start can be challenging, but it pays off big time. And personal growth. This is something that is important. It's important because I'll go to this slide straight away. It's because of the point number 3. I'd like to think it's not actually my idea that I come up with, but in startups, basically everyone in your team gets promoted after every 6 months. Your company grows. The people that you have in your team take more responsibility every day. So basically, it does not have to reflect in official titles or like fancy business cards or whatever. But if people are up to the opportunity, then in reality it means that like basically every 6 months you keep hiring for probably the first 2-3 years anyway. It means that these people that you maybe hired as your first software developer or your first infra guy or your first product kind of manager or project manager, they get the opportunity to grow and to get more responsibility. And it's with some people that are more junior, you kind of have to help them to kind of take this responsibility because of some inexperiences or insecurities, not because of their lack of knowledge. So this is something to keep in mind. Back to the point 1, I just quickly go through them. Communication skills and good people managers are critical if your team is distributed. You can have excellent experts in Tallinn and in Boston, but if there's like a communication kind of problem between them, then it's already a red flag. We do daily, weekly, and quarterly communication. Our daily communication is that every day, 5 p.m. sharp, we have a phone call with all the development team members in Tallinn and in Boston. It's every day. It's only for, on average, 7 to 8 minutes. Everyone gets 2 sentences, what you did today, what you got done today, and what will you do tomorrow. And that's it. We have weekly meetings every Monday, 4 p.m. sharp, where we basically talk about anything, either demo some new features, show some new mock-ups, like decide what kind of I don't know, off-site event we would like to organize. And we have quarterly kind of off-site events where the whole team is in one location, and we get outside the office and actually put the plan together for the next 3 months. It's important that people are communicating all the time. Otherwise, like the activities get very not confused, but people start working on different things. If people don't know exactly what everyone is doing, then it's hard to keep the focus of the whole team. Yes, it costs. Plane tickets cost. Flying people over is not cheap, but it's worth the money. And you have the feeling of the whole team and the personal touch with everyone. coming back to the previous, it's very hard to see, but the picture actually shows there's Italian footballer called Andrea Pirlo, and this is a graph from a match between Italy and England from this year's European Cup. This picture on the left shows all the dribbles that this guy did during the match, all the passes. There are 131 passes done. It usually totals about 14 kilometers per match. So on average, a footballer runs between 10 to 15 kilometers on the pitch. Out of these 131, only 6 of these passes created any chances. So this kind of reflects why it's important to have your visionary people or CEO or founders actually watching off from the pitch on the full picture to identify what are the real chances. I mean, you have so many activities on a startup every day. GrabCAD, I think a few months ago, and we still have the spreadsheet of business ideas to monetize. It's like pages long, all these ideas. You could work on many things. We are working on many things. But it's the key thing to identify, okay, what are the actual chances where we have any opportunity to score anything? So coming back to the summary, I think in the longer term, it's the most critical thing is that you have the great team. Everyone knows what they are doing. Everyone knows what the vision of the company is. Everyone knows that we want to have that many engineers in the community, or we want to get that product shipped on that date of time. But the critical thing then becomes that you need to spot the actual real chances from this 14-kilometer long dribble that 10 of your footballers do on the pitch. And of course, this takes experience. It's sometimes related to luck as well. But in order to even spot those chances, you still have to have like a fully, perfectly functioning team on the pitch, doing everything that can be done to score the goals. I hope for those people who do know nothing about football, it was still interesting. I hope you get some key points from this summary. If you have any questions regarding GrabCAD or what I am doing there or what everyone is doing in the company, shoot me off with questions either right now or later on. I think I've filled my time, so thank you for your patience.
Big applause, please. We have a new audience member walking around. That's nice. New CEO. We don't have much time. You have filled the time perfectly, but still we'll take 1 or 2 questions from the crowd. So please, hands from the back.
Hello. I am an American guy living in Estonia, and I was particularly interested in hearing your experiences working with American development groups in Boston. I'm wondering how GrabCAD has been successful interfacing with Americans without having an American in Estonia to deal with its developers, because I know my developers, having one of my clients talk to them is probably my worst nightmare. So I'm really curious as to how you guys have been successful without having an American here to deal with Americans.
That's a very good question, and the honest answer is that the start with anyone joining the team in Boston is always, not always, but in most cases, rocky. We get better with experience, but I think the key thing is that we have everyone in our team is not the type of person of this 9-to-5 programmer or 9-to-5 salesperson or anything 9-to-5. And what we kind of try to push with everyone in our team is that everyone has the ability to make decisions and speak up. And it was hard with Estonians at first, but this is probably the key thing that has actually helped to smooth the kind of communication and being on the same wavelength with Americans that join our team. And what also helps is that that as soon as you know someone who is joining your team or coming on board, either fly this person over or get there yourself or send some of the developers there yourself. We practice a way of having 2-3 people from our talent team in the US for a couple of months a year. So during the early summer, we had 1 designer and 2 developers in Boston for 2 months. And this kind of helps to broaden the perspective of Estonians to see how Americans work. They are great at networking. They know, okay, this is the life, how it works in the US. And this is something that if they spend more than a week there, like 2 months is already pretty long time, is something that they come back with. And next time we want to hire someone or we want to do some project together with some developers in the US, then we already know like what's the typical norm. So yeah, communication is the key.
Okay, last question please. Short and concrete. Anyone? Then I'll ask, okay, sorry, you. Wait for a second, microphone's coming.
Thank you. You mentioned that in this phase 3, the managers or the founders should start functioning like club managers. Did I catch it right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yes. And in your case, the founders, or what's your understanding that the founders maybe don't have this special manager skills, and how this match can be done smoothly?
That is also an extremely good question, because average US technology startups or companies that end up getting Series B or Series C financing, it's very often the case where the VCs replace the CEO or the top management with more experienced people. It's not 100% norm, but it happens very often. This is not something that anyone should be offended by, because it's true that if a company is founded by 25 or 27-year-old guys that have no previous company, either IPO or global growth experience, sometimes you need people with skills to do that. But I think it depends on what is the kind of external environment, what are your advisors, how your VCs can help you out with, whether they push that, okay, there is a potential in the existing management team to get to the top level. What are the people that we could try to get them in touch with to learn from? And if you have a really good match with all your stakeholders, it can be the case that, and if you are people willing to learn and are up to the challenge and actually perform, then it can be done. But it's nothing too abnormal to where actually the CEOs or the top management that is actually hired.
And in your case, GrabCAD?
Heart is still there.
Yeah, we fortunately still have our CEO in place, so.
And we'll finalize with that comment. Okay, a big applause, please.
Okay.